Hi there, it's Larold. Yesterday I put out a video about things you should do in the run-up to Dragonflight releasing, and in it I briefly mentioned that I've been spending a lot of time working on the Abomination stitching table associated with the Necrolords. I've learned a lot about the Stitchyard recently. It's pretty cool. There are 16 unique Abominations you're able to make, and they can all be your new friends. I really like these guys. There's a fun appearance-personality mismatch going on here. All these Abominations look pretty creepy, but then they have very nice, friendly voice lines delivered with a pretty scary rasp. Here's a couple of examples.
This can be more than a Stitchyard for us. We can make it a new home. Greetings, my friend. Know the soul, not the construct.
Relax, drink, have some food. We're all friends here. Mama Tomalin is always here for you.
The way this building works is actually very simple. You gather some special crafting mats to make bodies for all of your Abomination friends, then you make their bodies, and then they each give you a weekly quest, and that's pretty much all there is to it. The one issue with the Stitchyard is that it's the most time-consuming of the Covenant buildings, or at least it has been for me. So if you're trying to get all of the achievements done for this Covenant building before Dragonflight comes out, that can be pretty tough. Having a good plan will help a lot, and I've found a couple of tips that can make your time working with the Abominations move along a lot more quickly, so I'm just gonna get right into them. Crafting Abominations requires two materials that are only attainable if you have the Stitchyard constructed: Superior Parts and Malleable Flesh. Superior Parts are the rare Stitchyard resource. They come from two places: those weekly quests given by each of the Abominations you've crafted, which you can only do once a week for each Abomination. This is a good incentive to make as many of the Abominations as you can, as quickly as you can, since each of them gives more materials to make more A-bombs and so on, but there is a second way, and that is the Covenant mission table. The Covenant mission table can give you missions that reward superior parts, provided you've completed at least 8 adventure campaign missions with the Necrolords. Now, sitting around hoping for missions to give you superior parts as a reward, just to pop up on the table each day, that's not like a great strategy. It can be pretty slow, and thankfully, there's a better way. If you've hit 80 renown, you can freely swap your Covenant back and forth in Oribos. Swapping Covenants to another Covenant can reset your table missions, but it needs to be a Covenant where you don't have as much mission table campaign progress. So, in my case, my DK has barely done anything with the Night Fae mission table. He's done a bunch with the Kyrian, Vinthyr, and Necrolord tables, so I have to swap my DK back and forth between Night Fae and Necrolord. By doing this, I can repeatedly reset my group of missions until I get one that rewards superior parts. I do that superior parts mission, and then once it finishes, if I don't have any new ones ready, I can swap them back and forth again and again until I have fished for a mission that gives me superior parts. Now beware here. If you change Covenants, all of your active missions will be cancelled, and they won't complete. So don't swap if you have any missions that are currently out that would give you superior parts, as you will just lose out on those parts. The second item you need for the Stitchyard is Malleable Flesh. It's much easier and faster to farm than superior parts if you have a good strategy, but you need a lot more, like 500 or 600 or so, to craft everything that you want to make at the Stitchyard, as opposed to only 71 of the superior parts. Fortunately, I have found a way to farm all the Malleable Flesh you will ever need in a couple of hours at most, thanks to some very helpful Wowhead comments. Malleable Flesh can drop from any enemy in Shadowlands. I spent a few hours clearing out packs of mobs in Maldraxxus on my warrior. I mean, I was killing thousands of dudes, and I barely got any flesh at all. I got a recommendation to try soloing some normal dungeons, because dungeon mobs seem to have a higher drop chance on flesh, and normal dungeons are still tuned for groups of players in leveling gear, so like way below 200 item level. At this point, thanks to the Fated system, LFR gear from raids drops at 265 item level now, so getting enough gear to solo normal Shadowlands dungeons isn't too difficult. Obviously, if you don't want to do this, if you really feel uncomfortable about it, you can just run normal dungeons through the Dungeon Finder tool. It will be slower, but you won't have to solo anything. Now let's get on to the soloing. I'm doing Halls of Atonement because the opening courtyard and the area up the stairs after the first boss is packed with enemies. It's extremely dense. Now, how quickly you pull is entirely up to you. If you're worried about dying at all, you can take things slow. That's fine. Even if you're doing one pull at a time, this is still a much faster method than killing mobs out in the world. Please don't do what I did and kill mobs out in the world for hours. Big waste of time. I did some comparisons between pulling super conservatively and going as quickly as I possibly could, and I think the difference in time is around 10 minutes to fully clear everything at like max speed, and more like 20 if you're taking your time. So I think 15 minutes a run is a pretty reasonable conservative average estimate. You can expect to do about 3 or 4 of these runs per hour. Some of the mobs up the stairs after the first boss are more dangerous than ones in the opening part of the dungeon, so if you're feeling a little squishy, you can clear everything in the dungeon up to the first boss, and then just leave and reset at that point, and that will work too. In either case, once you've killed everything you want to, just zone out of the dungeon, reset all instances, hit yes on the confirmation dialogue, and then you're good to zone back in and kill everything again. It's a normal dungeon, so you can do it as many times a day as you like, up to the hourly instance limit, which I believe is still 10 unique instances per hour. Having done several runs now, I was averaging between 25 and 40 Malleable Flesh per full run, which, considering you could do 6 an hour if you're blazing, is really incredible. Worst case scenario, I think you can farm 75 an hour, which is still very good. When I was trying to farm them out in the world, I was getting closer to 20 an hour. Not good. On average, I think you can probably do these runs in about 15 minutes each, which means you can farm about 120 flesh an hour. Again, that's like 6 times more than I was getting just doing this, killing regular quest mobs out in the world. It means that you could get all the flesh farming done that you could possibly need in around 4 hours, but because you're doing Necrolord quests too, presumably, you're probably already going to get some Malleable Flesh in the process of doing those weekly quests. So you probably only need to spend more like an hour or so doing this little bit of Halls of Atonement farm to fill in the last bits of flesh you could possibly need to make all of your constructs. Before I finish, I just want to highlight some of the more dangerous mobs in the first section of Halls of Atonement. The gargoyles in there can hit kind of hard, so if you're feeling squishy at all, try not to pull them. The Houndmasters in the lower section cast Loyal Beasts, which make their beasts hit very hard, so you either want to stun those mobs or kill them to prevent that cast from going off. These are mobs that if you're squishy at all, I would recommend pulling one at a time. Try not to pull those into other packs. The same goes for the Shards of Halkias. Those are a little tanky. They're not too bad. I would just say they're worth using cooldowns when you kill them. And if you're not going to kill the first boss at all, don't even bother with the shards. Just kill all of the humanoid enemies around the zone, zip out, reset, come back in. The first boss isn't too bad. He spawns some pools on the ground with some of his abilities. You can just move out of those. He has a single target fear on normal difficulty that he will use on you if you take a little while to kill him. So if you're able to go immune to fear, I would recommend just doing that, obviously. You can't interrupt it, so your options are either immune it or kill him before he casts it, or just eat it. Be sure that you clear the area around him out before you pull him, since you don't want to get feared into a bunch of mobs and then beaten to death while you're not able to do anything. In the upper area, the Stoneborn Reavers have a cast that does an 8-second AoE stun and gives all nearby enemies a 50% damage reduction debuff. It's pretty annoying. It is interruptible, and it's dispellable, so Blood Elves could run out of the stun, then run back in and AoE dispel and be just fine, but your best course of action is just to interrupt the cast and try not to pull more than one of the Stoneborn Reavers at a time. The big gargoyles that are up the stairs do a frontal cone cast that knocks you back and does a lot of damage. You cannot sidestep it. They will just continue to turn to face you during the whole cast, but you can outrange it. It's a melee range ability, so you step like 5 yards away, wait for the cast to finish, step back in, and that's all that there is to it. And if you're on a warrior, you can intentionally take it and use it as a way to charge back in and generate some rage. The second boss is not worth killing. He stuns you, he's slow, he's annoying, and I killed him 3 or 4 times and all I ever got from him was 15 gold. Definitely not worth the time. Alright, well that's it. I hope this helps save you some time when you're doing the Stitchyard. It definitely would have helped me. Alrighty, like and subscribe, blah blah blah. Thanks for watching, bye.